Terima kasih Pak Rani. Selamat siang Bapak Ibu semua. Sungguh merupakan kehormatan untuk menjadi moderator di acara pidato mengenai politik luar negeri yang disampaikan oleh Bapak Prabowo Subianto sebagai calon presiden untuk pemilu tahun 2024-2029. Tidak perlu banyak perkenalan, cuma saya hanya ingin menyampaikan bahwa Pak Prabowo tentu saja memiliki pendidikan militer yang lengkap, alumni Capri Angkatan Darat tahun 1974, juga menempuh pendidikan Special Forces Officer Course for Training USA 1981, Advanced Infantry Officer 1985. Beliau juga baru saja menerbitkan buku Kepemimpinan Militer Indonesia yang saya rasa Bapak Ibu semua sudah mendapatkannya di Auditorium CSIS. Acara hari ini berlangsung dalam bahasa Indonesia, tetapi as you wish, if you wish to speak in English, silakan Pak Prabowo. Tapi juga Bapak Ibu semua yang ingin menyampaikan pertanyaan dalam bahasa Indonesia atau bahasa Inggris disediakan simultaneous translation. Without further ado, 30 menit waktu Pak Prabowo untuk menyampaikan pidato, dan akan dilanjutkan tanya jawab. Floor is yours, Pak.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat siang, saudara-saudara sekalian. Salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan. Yang saya hormati Bapak Harijan Silalahi, Ketua Pembina Yayasan CSIS, Bapak Yusuf Manadi, Wakil Ketua Pembina Yayasan CSIS, Bapak Dr. Hasan Wilajuda, anggota Pembina Yayasan CSIS, Bapak Profesor Jisman Simanjuntak, Ketua Pengurus Yayasan CSIS, Ibu Clara Yuwono, Wakil Ketua Pengurus Yayasan CSIS, Ibu Dr. Mari LK Pangestu, anggota Pembina Yayasan CSIS, Ibu Ria Murdani, anggota pengawas Yayasan CSIS, Bapak Dr. Rizal Sukma, Bapak Dr. Jose Rizal Damuri, Executive Director CSIS, Ibu Dr. Medlina Hendi Tio, Wakil Direktur Eksekutif Bidang Operasional CSIS, Ibu Dr. Syafiah Mudibat, Wakil Direktur Eksekutif Bidang Studi CSIS, Bapak Dr. Felix Vermonte, Senior Fellow CSIS, yang hadir mendampingi saya hari ini, Letnan Jenderal TNI Purnawirawan Safri Samsudin, Ibu Mutia Hafid, Ketua Komisi 1 DPR RI dan Wakil Ketua Tim Kampanye Nasional saya, Letnan Jenderal TNI Purnawirawan Hotman Mangaraja Panjaitan, mantan Duta Besar kita di Prancis, Laksamana Madya TNI Purnawirawan Didit Ashraf, mantan Wakil Kepala Staf Angkatan Laut dan Wakil Gubernur Anas, dan seluruh duta besar negara-negara sahabat yang hadir di sini. Karena begitu banyak perwakilan dari negara asing, ada 80, dalam rangka menghormati para tamu, as a courtesy, I would like to give my talk in English. First of all, I would like to thank the CSIS for the great honor given to me. I'm being invited here at this very illustrious and very famous and very important institution. The history of CSIS, I think, can be considered as really a part of the recent history of Indonesia for the last 5 decades. Therefore, it's a good one for me. And today I've been asked to talk about the direction and the strategy of our foreign policy. If in the event that I get the mandate from my people and I will form the next government, I think it could be of interest to see the direction and the strategy of the foreign policy that I will pursue. However, basically, I think all observers of Indonesia will realize that the tradition of Indonesia's foreign policy has been very, very clear. From the early days of our independence and our sovereignty, we have opted for an independent foreign policy guided by the principles of non-membership of any geopolitical bloc. Our tradition in foreign policy has always been non-aligned. We do not wish to be part of any geopolitical bloc. And this tradition, I think I am committed to continue and to pursue, because it is not only in our tradition, it is the wish of the majority of the Indonesian people, and more importantly, it's in our national interest. Indonesia, because of our history, because of our geographical position, we are basically in the middle of great civilizations. We are at the crossroads of great civilizations. We have been the crossroads for many, many centuries. Even now, we are in the middle of very important trading routes, strategic waterways. We are, I think, maybe the second or the third longest coastline in the world. We depend on trade. We have always depended on trade from our early existence as independent sultanates, principalities, etc. We live on trade. We are dependent on trade. So therefore, it has become our perceived interest to have this tradition, what I call the good neighbor policy. We want to maintain a policy of good neighborliness in our region and also in the world. Number one, this is in our strategic interest, what I call even our defense outlook will be based on this premise. A web of strong friendship. This web of strong friendship will actually be our strongest pillar of foreign policy and, in the end, also our defense policy. Why? Because of the common denominator that every country in the world faces, especially in Southeast Asia. We need peace and stability for our economy to flourish. And we need our economy to flourish to bring prosperity to our people. That, in the final analysis, is the duty of any government. We must eradicate poverty. A regime, a government, a national religion that cannot take care of its own people does not have any right to comment on the policies of other countries. We must take care of our own household first. We must take care of our people. For this, for our economy to flourish, we need peace and stability. We need good relations with all countries. We need this relationship web that will invite foreign investment, that will open markets for us, that will create jobs for our people, and in the final analysis, to eradicate poverty. Basically, that is my speech. Short and sweet, I think, right? I think this is the shortest speech I've made this year, you know? Because the tendency is for any politician, you know, once they get a microphone in front of them, they don't want to let go. But I realize so many distinguished ambassadors and so many distinguished leaders here. So I think I'll keep it short and to the point. This is our policy. This is our tradition. This is our conviction. We will not be part. As long, if I get the mandate, I will maintain this tradition. We will not join any bloc. We will not be part of any military alliance that is against our tradition. And in my conviction, it is against our national interests. We respect all the great powers in the world. The West has contributed great contributions to humanity. The East also. China has been a great civilization for thousands of years. Basically, it is the oldest human civilization in recorded history. India also. All the other powers, Russia, we respect. Russia has been a good friend of Indonesia. Africa, we suffered the same fate. We were under colonialism and imperialism for many, many years. We know what it means to live under oppression. Our parents, our grandparents imprisoned, our ancestors thrown away to many parts of the world. We know how demeaning it is to be considered second, third, fourth class. I, as a young man, I myself saw the signs outside swimming pools in Jakarta. It was in the wall, yeah. dipahat di marmer. It was engraved in the marble, and it said, "Verboden voor honden and inlander." I saw with my own eyes. In 1978, there was still this. It was closed by a mosque. When I opened it, I saw this. So I would like to say that we identify with the peoples under occupation, striving for their independence everywhere. Because we felt it. I went to school in Singapore and Hong Kong when Singapore and Hong Kong were still British colony. There were certain parts that I, being a brown man, could not go in. So I experienced as a young boy. Therefore, we identify with the peoples that are striving for their independence today. However, that is the beauty of the Indonesian people and culture. We don't hold grudges. We have no enmity. We are now friends with the Dutch. We are friends with everybody now. I think that is the uniqueness of, maybe could be said, the uniqueness of Indonesia, that Indonesians basically forget easily. So basically, that concludes my talk. Therefore, this should not be pidato. Pidato itu panjang. Ini, let us say, a small talk. And better I conclude my remarks and I open myself for questions from the floor, if there are any. If there are no questions, all the better. But anyway, if you have a question, please give easy questions. Not so difficult. Thank you very much.
Terima kasih, Prabowo. Now you give me hard job to do because we are not half an hour, so I have to fill in. Thank you for I think a very short but deep speech on the future of Indonesia's foreign policy under a Prabowo administration. If I may, before we open the Q&A, I'm going to use my power. Probably this is my only time to have power over you. A question related to what you've been said. Being a non-aligned country, somehow we do need a clear policy towards big powers. What would be your initial thought on Indonesia's China policy or Indonesia's US policy? If I may request your insight on this.
Well, as I explained, we respect the United States. Let us be very clear, the United States has helped Indonesia in the critical moments of Indonesian history. This we must acknowledge. In our war of independence, the United States basically sided with Indonesia. That is a part of history. The United States put strong pressure on the Dutch to negotiate and to hand over sovereignty. That is part of history. So no doubt about it that we cannot forget this debt of honor to the United States of America. In critical time, they sided with us. Also, I would like to say, Australia sided with us in our war of independence. This is a fact of history. In fact, when there was a United Nations mediation effort, and there was a committee of good officers, if I'm not mistaken, that was the Committee of Good Officers. The Netherlands chose Belgium, right? That's a no-brainer. But Indonesia chose Australia, and the United States was chosen by the United Nations. That shows the depth of our relationship. And you know, we don't forget our friends in difficult times. However, we also recognize China's importance in Southeast Asia and also for Indonesia now. As I said, China is a great civilization. It has contributed a lot, and now it is very active and contributing a lot to our economy. Russia, we also cannot forget. Russia helped Indonesia also in difficult times. Yes, at that time it was called the Soviet Union, but if you see Jakarta now, if you see our capital city, many of the great public works built by, at that time, Soviet Union, by Russian and by, let us say, Eastern Bloc countries. So this is, if you ask me, we have to give due respect to these great powers. Yeah. We also have to respect and have the best of relations with India, with the Islamic countries, of course. We are majority Muslim, with Japan. So basically, Indonesia's my philosophy is 1,000 friends too few, one enemy too many. This is easier said than done. It is easy to say, but it's not easy to carry out. But this is, I'm convinced, even now, this is my philosophy in my my domestic politics. As you may have observed, right? I'm friends with everybody. Even if they don't want to be friends with me, I still want to be friends with them. I learned this the hard way. Through a long process, you know. When you are young, sometimes you are a bit, you are a bit unwise. As time goes on, and so I'm convinced this is, and actually, I regret that I learned this teaching a bit late in my life. And I learned it maybe in my 30s and 40s, maybe, I don't know. My biography would be a bit different. But it's okay. Yeah, better late than never. So my village. That is my philosophy, right? I mean, I'm sorry if somebody wants to get us here and get us there. I said, no, we are friends with all. And maybe as friends to many sides, we can be of assistance. We can be some sort of bridge. We can be some sort of, when we needed them, they helped us. Maybe now we should give them a payback. We should help those who once helped us. So I think that is my position regarding relations with the great powers.
Thank you, Pak Prabowo. I still have 15 minutes of your time, so I have one or two more questions before I open the floor. Something sounded like music to my ears when you were saying that basically foreign policy begins at home. That poverty alleviation should be very important, and then all our domestic stabilities and so on. And we know that China has been praised by many reports that successive Chinese governments since 1970s have been able to lift more than 700 million people out of poverty. Would you emulate the way the Chinese governments are doing in terms of poverty alleviation?
Is this a direct question? Then I want to make something very clear. I do admire and acknowledge the success of the Chinese leaders in nearly eradicating poverty. I think we have to, anybody with any fairness in the rationality, etc., must acknowledge that the Chinese leaders has achieved something very rare in human history, to lift 700 million people out of poverty in one generation, in 40 years. That is a real achievement. So in my opinion, each country, each civilization has its own culture, has its own way of doing things. If a government in one country succeeded in mitigating or even eradicating poverty, I think it behooves us to try to learn how they did it. But it does not mean that we can copy their methods. Maybe their method is not in tune with our culture. So we have to adjust. At the same time, many of our people, especially the educated elite, for the last 50 years, maybe 60 years, we have been always looking to the West. I think it's normal. We were colonized by the West, so a lot of our experience, our thinking, we like to emulate the West, because the West, no doubt, has succeeded in many fields. Industrial Revolution, Reformation, the Renaissance, development of democracy. We must acknowledge the great strides of the West. But on the other hand, we cannot copy. What works for the West, we cannot bring to Indonesia and or bring anywhere in the world and try to carry it out, especially in the West. So there are nuances. So I think there must be a rebalancing. And now we have to learn from other countries, from the East, the Japanese experience, the Korean experience, the Chinese experience, the Indian experience. So this is my position, that we admire what the Chinese have done. Tremendous achievement. And I think many of the Chinese leaders are true to their principles and true to their conviction. They understand that they have to serve the people. So I think this is the message that not that we can copy, we can emulate everything they have done. No, we have our way of doing things. They have their way of doing things. Yeah. Some we can emulate. Maybe their commitment against corruption, their focus on education, their strong discipline, their strong national pride. This we admire. If you go to a Chinese high school, you will find out they spend many hours in the school. You go home maybe 9 o'clock at night. So this type of dedication, this type of commitment, it's something that it behooves us to study and to try to adopt some of the best practices. Thank you.
Thank you. Please give a round of applause to our president for responding to the two questions. Now, I think I'm going to ask our former foreign minister, Pak Hasan Yuda, the honor to ask a question. Silakan Pak Hasan.
Terima kasih terhadap Pak Lantai, Pak Prabowo yang saya hormati, penghargaan dan terima kasih saya atas pidato tentang arah dan strategi politik luar negeri Indonesia. Tadi digarisbawahi bahwa prinsip number one adalah good neighbor policy. Pasti menurut tanggapan saya tidak hanya neighbors yang punya direct border dengan Indonesia, karena yang dimaksud juga bisa jadi dalam artian kawasan terbatas adalah Southeast Asia, Asia Tenggara, tapi juga Asia Timur. Asia Timur itu dalam pengertian baru itu mencakup 16 negara. 10 negara ASEAN, China, Japan, dan Korea, as well as India, Australia, and New Zealand. Dengan terjadinya pergeseran, with the geopolitical shift from transatlantic to East Asia, East Asia now is the region of the 21st century. We are in the very center of the world now. We are no longer in the periphery like during 40 years of Cold War. Of course, being the center of the world and the intensive cooperation that we have been developing, in particular in economic cooperations, the center of Asia offers many good opportunities. Intra-ASEAN trade, other intra-East Asian trade, intra-East Asian investment has been always on the rising since, say, year 2000. Prabowo underlines the importance of trade to many countries. Last year, our bilateral trade with China reached $169 billion. Not to mention the Singapore, Malaysia, with Japan, Korea, and others. So, but this Asian century also offers potential conflicts. The existing conflicts might develop into an open conflicts, in particular between the superpowers. The problem is that not only that they are, United States see China as their strategic competitor, meaning competition in many different areas, not just trade war like what President Trump used to play, but in many different areas. And the problem between the two is that there's been a lack of direct communications and dialogues. Of course, we appreciate that President Xi Jinping will be meeting with President Biden and former Foreign Minister of China visited Washington with his counterpart. But still, the danger of no direct communication and dialogue, as Henry Kissinger has said, that there is great potential of tensions, local conflicts to develop into global conflicts. So, I wish that Pak Prabowo elaborate. How do you see this development in our regions, and how you develop your foreign policy with regard to our kawasan regions of Asia and now also developing called as the Pacific. I thank you, Pak Prabowo.
Tadi Bapak berdiri, saya juga berdiri. Untuk jawab. Yes, the competition, rivalry between the two great powers is a matter of concern for us, and these rivalries has been occurring during the long history of mankind. There will always be one power who will feel threatened by the rise of a new great power, and this is the history of mankind. And sad to say that in the history of mankind, a lot of these competitions ended in open war. So this is something that is of concern to us. I think there was some good research made by a historian, I think, Graham Allison, if I'm not mistaken. He made some sort of study of the great rivalries. A strong power that has been, let us say, predominant will always feel threatened by a new rising power. The situation now is a bit different. Our world is getting smaller, and any conflict can very fast, any open conflict between the great powers can very fast turn into nuclear war. And in nuclear war, I think the destruction and the suffering will be on a scale that we have never seen before, and that is considered mutual assured destruction. So I am an optimist. I believe that the leaders of these great superpowers are cognizant of their duty to their people and to humanity. I think that in the end, these leaders will rise to the occasion, and I think we are seeing steps towards that event. We see the Australian Prime Minister meeting the Chinese leaders. We see the American President will be meeting the President of the PRC. So these steps are really showing us that they realize that can erupt if this competition is not calibrated. So I am a bit optimistic. I think because any open conflict will result in all sides suffering. And as a former military man, when we have these simulations and let us say war games, you can calculate. And if the advantage is not commensurate with the loss, I think a rational leader will want to avoid open warfare. And I think this is the way of the world now. So I am hopeful that with these meetings and this competition will be there, and why not? Competition is good, but competition should not deteriorate into zero-sum game. So, Pak Hasan Wirajula, I think I'm a bit more optimistic now, I think. And I think my instincts have shown to be a bit correct in many parts of the world, that we, the people of the world, would like collaboration, not conflict. And I think this is the trend of the world. We are so small now, the planet is getting smaller. We have problems with climate change. For us in this part of the world, climate change is not something theoretical. Many of our people are losing their land, losing their homes because of the rising sea. And any government of Indonesia must address this clear and present danger of the environment, of climate. We have so many problems facing us. And so therefore, I think our stand is, our direction is very clear and very, very appropriate. 1,000 friends to few, one enemy to many, collaboration, cooperation, good neighbor, and let us seek prosperity for all. Let us maintain peace. I was a former soldier. I know what fighting means. The innocent will always suffer. For some, collateral damage is what do you call it? Is a term. I have seen collateral damage. The innocent will suffer. And therefore, I'm even more convinced that we must do all our utmost to avoid any inclination to solve political problems through military means. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Prabowo. Now, we are in the election mood. So I see those on the right-hand side have more in numbers. So I start with those who are on the right-hand side. If there's any questions from right-hand side of us. Anyone? Yes, I see His Excellency Ambassador of Japan. Excellency, please.
My name is Kanasu Kenji, Ambassador of Japan. Thank you very much, Mr. Prabowo, for your very concise opening statement. My question is economic diplomacy. People say that the global free trade is in danger, and free trade has supported global goals for half a century or more. Of course, strategic rivalries between the United States and China is one thing, but at the same time, on the Indonesian front, Indonesia's export restrictions on raw materials such as nickel has been a contentious issue in the WTO for quite some time. And also Indonesia's import restrictions and sometimes excessive local content requirement is getting a hindrance to trade and investment between Indonesia and its trading partners. So once elected, how are you going to resuscitate global free trade? And also how you address Indonesia's trade and investment policy? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. Please, Pak Prabowo.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Yes, in principle, we are need to maintain free trade in principle. But there's another principle that's very important for us, and that's the principle of equal playing field, the principle of fairness. So, regarding raw materials, we feel that it's our right of our people to want to be as advanced as Japan. We want to be an industrial country. We want to produce sophisticated goods. We are open for trade, but we feel that, we want our people also not to have always minimum wage. A lot of our people live on less than $2 a day. Some maybe less than $1 a day. A lot of our people cannot get jobs. Many of our children